Hello everybody, welcome back to Dominions 5. We're jumping right back into our battle plan for this game, our game plan, battle plan, I don't know what I've been calling this. I'm sure I've been fairly inconsistent. For the BumbleRumble game in which we're playing as Tien. Now, I've been talking about our build in which we ended up going for a Rainbow Pretender. Now, the build that I suggested involves, it's just a Rainbow Bliss on heavy cavalry. You can never go wrong with that. It'll expand very well. But other than expansion, there are a few other things that we need to think about in the early game. And this is kind of a let's play game of what can kill us first, right? So in any game, you always have to be worried, like, what if your neighbor has an awake pretender, like an awake expander, like an earth snake? Like, can I kill an earth snake, right? So, by the way, earth snake is this guy. So, here's a build, right? I mean, whatever, like heart's fortitude, right? Can you kill this thing? Because this guy has like 20 protection. He's going to have temper flesh. So actually, this is stupid because you wouldn't get temper flesh and fortitude. Maybe get hard skin, right? Whatever. So whatever. He's going to have like super high protection, fear, and he's just going to wreck your stuff, right? So can you kill an earth snake? Can you kill, this nation doesn't have it, but can you kill like a raging bull, right? With regeneration and, I don't know, blood surge or something like that, right? Can you kill an awake expander? Because if you can't, then your build is like you're just gambling. You're doing a coin flip, right? If you cannot stop something, then it's kind of like not a good build. You need to have something that can stop something like an earth snake. Now, fortunately, I think Tien has fairly decent options. In our basic infantry with a glaive. This glaive weapon does 22 damage, which for a human is quite amazing. It is also pierce slash. So the way, if you have a combined type, it'll just roll between the two. So half the time it'll be pierce, half the time it'll be slash. Pierce reduces armor by 20%. So having a bunch of these troops, in fact, if it was... sometimes you just want to mass the troops so you get the cheaper guys here just to get even more weapons. But this guy only has 9 attack. What about this guy? 10 attack. Yeah, you might need the extra attack. And then having as a research target... going down enhancement just to get strength of giants, which is very easy to grab, is going to... These are 200 weapons, so they get extra bonus from strength. We're going to buff up these cheap little human infantry guys to be doing like 25 damage. And you can kill an awake expander with 25 damage, piercing weapons, for sure. So we kind of don't need to build anything too special into our bless to deal with an awake, an awake expander with a lot of protection. We also, incidentally, can... so we have all those glaives in front, and you can also have some crossbows in the back with their armor-piercing weapons, right? You could probably get some flaming arrows going. Yeah, that's only in Enhancement 4. And that's something that you can cast with, in the not too... So you can get a fire guy. You need to do communion, so you need a crystal matrix. So you need to go construction 4 to get that going. So that'd be sort of like a next step. But in the sort of early mid game, that could definitely be a target that you have reached. Okay, so we're kind of safe from awake expanders. Now, what about... meme bliss, like some crazy murder bliss sacred rush? Well, in that case, we need to think about who our neighbors are going to be. And so why don't we load up the game here? Or this was just the test game, but it shows the map of where our neighbors are. So We have 4 direct neighbors. We have Bandarlog to the south, Shinuyama to the west, we have Mikland to the north, and we have Ulm to the east. I don't know why in this test game Satis has come all the way down here. But Satis is unlikely to be our direct neighbor. Marignan is up here, is unlikely to be our direct neighbor. Yeah, those. I mean, they might be, but these 4 are our main neighbors that we need to be worried about. So let's take a look at these nations very quickly. So Shinuyama does not typically. Where is Shinuyama? Here. Okay. Shinuyama does not typically do a crazy sacred rush, and that is because they don't have sacreds. So we don't really have to worry about a meme murder sacred bless. I mean, they have Bakemono sorcerers, which are amazing, but these guys want to have gear. They want to have some nice spells researched. So not a problem. Okay. Ulm, as you know well, does not have sacreds. So we also don't need to worry about a meme sacred bless from them. That being said, if we are going to expand and rely on our own heavy cav sacreds, if Ulm comes at us with the Guardians, they do amazing against anybody's sacreds. So we are going to have to diversify a little bit. But that's a whole other can of worms. Okay, Bandarlog. Bandarlog can play a lot of different ways. But one thing they can definitely do is do a murder bless on their Tiger Riders. So these are cap only. They also have Recruit Anywhere Sacreds, the white ones, which are, kind of an average. It's not fair to call them an average troop. They're okay. The Falchion is actually not terrible. They've got a shield. They've got defense, and attack. They Recruit Anywhere, which is the main issue. But these guys can be nasty little buggers. They're kind of expensive on the gold side, and they don't have a lot of hit points. Their gear here is not amazing in terms of their protective gear, but they have high defense and 3 attacks per turn. This is not like most cavalry, which has a lance that only gets used once. This is 3 attacks every turn. So like quickness on these guys is disgusting. Even some kind of killy rainbow bless with blood surge and attack, and I mean, there are a lot of different varieties, a lot of different ways that you can make these guys into absolute murder monsters. So how could we defend against Bandarlog, who was going for this kind of attack? Well, it depends how killy they go. But the thing that we do have to keep in mind is that they're pretty vulnerable themselves. They're only 10 hit points. They have pretty high defense. We could, like, our current Rainbow Sacred build could kind of go toe-to-toe against them. It would just be a bloodbath on each side. So it'd be tricky to see who came out on top. However, we can just back up our front line with a ton of archers, which are just going to murder these guys, because bucklers are pretty shitty shields. So a ton of archer fire is going to really decimate these sacreds. That's one of their big vulnerabilities. And they don't... Bandarlog doesn't really have air access for arrow fend anytime soon. So that is how I would deal with the murder bless from this particular neighbor. Now, our other neighbor is Mikland. And Mikland has... This is MA Mikland, so let's take a look. I think this is the right color. Yes. Okay, so we've got Jaguar Warriors. Okay. These guys have a really killy attack, and then when they die, they become Jaguars, which do, like, I think even more attacks per turn. These are really strong. We have Sun Warriors, which these aren't the guys I thought. Who are the flying ones that then don't fly? Oh, these Eagle Warriors. There we go. So you've got Eagle Warriors that fly when they're blessed. We've got Sun Warriors that have a hatchet. And then we've got these Jaguar Warriors. I'm pretty sure these are Recruit Anywhere. One of these is... no, this is cap only Cap only. Eagle Warriors are recruit anywhere. So you can totally expect some kind of Killy Bless on Micklin. I mean, that's just... These guys are screaming for a Killy Bless. And not only is it going to be a Killy Bless, it's going to be a Killy Bless that's going to attack rear you, like right away with a bunch of flyers. So how can we defend against this? Well, we just need to have guys that are tough enough. So if we do end up fighting Micklin, we just need to have a lot of high armor troops that are going to be able to absorb the initial shock. And honestly, after that, as soon as we start hitting them, we're going to murder all their guys, because their guys are like alpha strike. They're going to hit once and hard, and then they're going to die. Archery fire could also be useful against them. They're very vulnerable. If we can get like some kind of storm up before they can even fly, that's an option. So the only issue here, and this actually did work out in my favor in this game, is he actually did go for a bless that involved thunder weapons, the air weapons thing, which does like a shock thing, and we did have shock resistance on our bless. So that is a way that our build can counter a sort of meme bless from this guy. So, when you're planning for the early game in any game, you have to figure out how you're going to expand, how your nation expands. In our case, we have a lot of different ways that we can do the expansion without our sacreds or with our sacreds. Then you have to figure out, can you kill an early awake expander that's going to come and do war with you? Typically, early awake expanders are going to be fairly high protection or a huge pile of hit points with regeneration. So you need to have killy troops. We have fairly killy troops in these glaives. Also, our sacreds, honestly, are quite killy. But that is going to direct our initial research paths, and that's what I'm going to talk about next. And then you have to look at your neighbors and figure out, are we likely to get attacked early with some kind of meme bless? And there are two possibilities. I'm not saying it's the most likely build, but they could. And if you're not ready for it, then you're going to be screwed, right? So those are all things you need to think about when you're planning your game, when you're planning the nation that you're going to play with, and the build that you are going for the early game. Now let's talk about research priorities. How are we going to play out the first part of the game, right? So let's talk about that. So in terms of research, again, the greedy play is always kind of to go construction. That's what most people do. Oh, this is a bad, because I've got debug mod on. We can't see research properly. Let's go back into the full game here. No. Okay, so let's talk about research. So what are things that we want to get early? Typically, construction is seen as the greedy play, because at construction 4, you can start to forge, because either construction, in early construction or in construction like 6, here so at construction 2, you can do alquils. With air income, we have our default gem income is earth, water, astral, and air. So you could definitely squeeze out a few alquils. So getting construction 2 is something you can do. Honestly, I forget what I did in this game. I don't think it's strictly necessary. We have good research anyways, but I mean, you can do it if you feel that you want to be that greedy. And construction 2 is really not a big investment. However, remember, I think in the early game, you got to make sure you have the tools to beat some kind of early game rush against you. So what are the key early game techs that you need to be safe? I think enhancement 3 for Strength of Giants is really important in any nation that has Earth access, because Strength of Giants really can turn some of your chaff units into actually scary units, right? if I've got an Awake Expander, I do not want to throw him into glaives with Strength of Giants. So this is definitely something that you want to consider. Now, our mages, we have Astral, we have Earth access, we have all sorts of access, right? But we're not doing this for, personal regen on our thugs. We don't have any of those. There's only one spell here, but it's a really important one, okay? Strength of Giants is really key. Now, in order to be able to cast Strength of Giants, we're going to have to communion up because we don't have high earth mages. We just got communion guys. So you definitely need to grab Thaumaturgy 1. So Thaumaturgy 1, Enhancement 3. Now, what else are key grabs, key things that you need to get? You could definitely go grab Thaumaturgy 2 because Mind Burn is going to be a pretty effective spell. Its MR negates, so it doesn't, but it's armor negating, right? So this is, in general, this does work fairly well, especially in the very recent patch. They kind of buffed Precision 100 spells. This is basically always going to hit, and so if for example, if Alm was attacking us, Alm has terrible magic resistance and they have high protection. This is going to shred Alm, right? So if I was worried about fighting Alm early on, Thaumaturgy 2 would be a great target. Another really key low-tech priority that we would probably go for is Conjuration. Conjuration 3 gives us Summon Earth Power, which is going to allow our mage communions to run for a lot longer. But that being said, the main reason that you might want to go for Conjuration is for emergency elemental spam. Okay, with our paths, we can summon all the different kinds of elementals. And so if you're just getting rushed by like more army than you can defend against, then just throw all your gems onto mages and summon a ton of elementals, right? That's always a great way to defend. Herd of Buffaloes is also a really strong summon early on, like 45 hit point Berserk Tramplers are pretty nice, and all this is available at Conjuration 3 only. So definitely worth looking into. In fact, even Celestial Servants like Conjuration 1, like if you've got an early war and you don't feel prepared, just this low tech investment could definitely get you places. And again, I'm only looking at things that are sort of level 3 and below. Now in Alteration, we start getting, this could be a bit more of an investment, but Alteration, you would want to get down to Alteration 4 for Body Ethereal, okay? Body Ethereal, I mean, there are actually quite a few things that you can go for here. So, Body Ethereal, because we can kind of mass a bunch of Astral Mages, you can combine this with a pile of Sacreds to just get a bunch of Ethereal Heavy Cav. That could be really nasty. We also get Swarm here, so we have Nature Mages easily. Getting a few Nature Gems on these guys, getting a bunch of bugs in the air can really turn the tide of battle. We also have Quickness here. We have good Water Mages. Our Cat Mages are going to be water. This only affects like one area, but this is a nice buff to your cavalry. So if you have a bunch of Water 2 randoms, have a bunch of them doing Quickness, not a bad investment. And we have Wind Guide. So if you end up in a conflict where archery is the way to go, this is a fantastic buff. So Alteration 4 is definitely a target. Plus, you're going to want to get Alteration anyways, because that's going to lead to Alteration 5, where you're going to open up Wooden Warriors. And we start to get some of our resists if we need them. So we start to get Lightning Resist here, which is easy for us to cast. And we also get the Fire and the Water Resistances here. Of course, you have resistance spells in Enchantment too, but Enchantment, going beyond Enchantment 3 in the early game is not usually necessary. We're not fighting against anybody where we absolutely need anti-magic. flaming arrows would be nice, but it's going to take a bit of investment in construction to get our communion set up to be able to cast this properly. And we're not really a death nation, so we're not going racing for enchantment 5 for Horde of Skeletons. So this is not a super high priority in the early game. Now notice I haven't talked about evocation much. Honestly, I don't think at this early, like, you're not the... All right, let's make a sentence here. Evocation in the early game is not what is going to save you from dying in an early war, okay? The best spells that you have in Evocation in the early game, remember, our best mages are these Earth Astral guys, so of course we have randoms and everything else. But, like, we have a lot of water guys, but, like, probably the best low path water spell, low path is important here, is Frozen Heart. Okay, armor negating, no MR, just cold damage, right? But this is Alteration 6, so if you don't have that, then like Cold Bolt, like there's pure water at low paths is not super exciting. What is exciting? Well, if we were fighting undead, solar rays, I mean, I would say for sure rush Evocation 2. As it is, Starfires is armor negating. I mean, Evocation 1 is going to cost you nothing to get, sure, I guess. We only affects magic beings. I don't think we have any opponents that are using magic units against us, so there really isn't anything here. Stellar Cascades, of course, is awesome, but this is Evocation 5. This is not going to be online on time to fight an early game rush. Really, what we're talking about here is Blade Wind at Evocation 4, and then Gifts from Heaven at Evocation 5. So these are super strong, and we have Communion Earth Mages, so we can do this super well. Blade Wind is great against low protection troops. Gifts from Heaven is great against high protection troops. It's great against everything. Although the precision is hilariously bad. So these are super legit targets, but I would not rush for them. Because you gotta get all the way up to tech level 4 and tech level 5. That can take many turns of research in the early game. You will be better served in almost all situations by getting Strength of Giants, Conjuration to get more chaff in front, some Alteration, just a bit of Thaumaturgy to get your communions up, and just relying on your buffed troops, and a bit of background spells, like we said, like Mind Burn or something like that. That is going to keep you safe from most of these early game attacks that can come at you. Okay, I think that covers most of the early game stuff. There's a lot of things that we haven't yet talked about that have to do with our build, of course, but that's the idea, right? I'm not going to just we're not going to forget our build as we talk about mid-game and late-game stuff. We're going to always come back to it, because this is sort of like the planning that we're doing before we even start the game. What tools am I going to need in order to defeat this, or in order to deal with that threat? So I'm going to wrap this episode up, and in the next one, I think we're going to talk about... I think we'll talk about thugs. We'll see. I'll decide in just a moment. So I'll see you guys then. Take care.